Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tyler Prohaska. I'm the features editor of Basic Income Earth Network's Basic Income News. I'm joined today by Simo Roitanen, chairman of the Basic Income Earth Network affiliate in Finland. How are you doing, Simo?
Yes, hi.
I invited Simo because of topics that I'm interested in, which is environmentalism and basic income. And I think there's two schools of thought, and one of them is, their complementary policies, and the other is their tree. And I guess maybe it's to help my own personal thoughts about this. So I invited Simo, who is also a fellow vegan and environmental activist, and he was also obviously part of the basic income movement. So first, Simo, I want to ask you, do you think that there's a connection between basic income and environmentalism, and what do you think that connection is?
I think the connection could go many ways, but for a moral basis, if we are interested in human rights with the universal basic income, and we are interested in environmental issues and animal rights through some kind of green thinking and veganism, there are interests that are not contradictory, or they are complementary. But in practice, there is many different ways to put these ideas together.
So, I mean, do you how a basic income could be designed in a way that was environmentally friendly?
Well, I suppose when we talk about distribution of welfare, distribution of money, it's of course always a matter of purchasing power, which follows that we are talking about the redistribution or pre-distribution of wealth, and actually that always means consumption. The, the possibilities to use the resources. So if this is a matter of income distribution, the way to be ecological about this is to argue if there is some basic rights for people. So if this is income distribution, then we have to think if it's ecological, even the distribution, if the people who...
A lot of people, they talk.
Yes.
What I was going to say is that a lot of people, when they talk about, or their first introduction to basic income is through something like a tax. Basic income may be as kind of countering effects if you fund it with something like a pollution or resource taxes.
Yes, that's the one way of implementing basic income ecologically, is depending on how we fund it. If we are funding it by sharing a portion of common welfare to tax using natural resources to finance basic income, then it's of course more ecological to take taxes on consumption. But on the other hand, how we handle the taxing of consumption. If we talk about value-added taxes, it's kind of not the real consumption tax. We should tax the primary production, the pollution, the use of land resources, the use of natural resources in the first levels of production. Taxing with the VAT is actually considering it's just another way to tax work and other way to tax purchasing power. So actually VAT taxes are targeted to work, and it's kind of contradictory to basic income, because the idea of basic income is distribution of resources, the basic needs, and the basic needs are basically needs to consume resources.
I know that previous basic income trials and what I've been reading out of the Give Directly trial is it seems like some of the world they're turning towards animal agriculture. I'm wondering if on that, I mean, do you see animal agriculture as an appropriate development? And if basic income facilitates the use of animals, what is your reaction to that?
I think the connection with these things in basic income, it's kind of currently the governments are supporting the consumption of animal products and polluting the environment. These kind of subsidies should be replaced with basic income, and for animal agriculture, the modern Western world is consuming too much, and the governments are supporting this consumption. And if we are, for one basic thing, we are fighting with campaigning for basic income. One of the main opponent opinions about basic income is that it's too expensive. How do we fund sharing basic income for everyone, poor or rich? So this is the point where we have to rethink also the economic systems in background. So if there are some negative incentives with taxing the basic income from only the income taxes, why couldn't we fund part of the basic income as a dividend to cut the subsidies for consuming the environment?
And have we seen in practice what research says on cash transfers and the environment? Is there a lot of research on that, or is this early to kind of to make these assumptions?
Of course, there's a lot of research for consuming meat. The whole food industry gives for the climate change. The estimations are varying, but it's eat takes at least about 20% of the emissions causing climate change. So it's obvious we need to cut that.
Advocates more likely to eat less meat. It seems like, in my experience, it's far more likely that you're a vegan if you're also an advocate of basic income. So I'm wondering if that's been your experience as well.
Well, I think this is some kind of moral philosophy we have. You don't have to be vegan to support basic income. You don't have to be vegan to be environmentalist, and you don't have to be so extreme. For me, the veganism is the easiest personal choice to cut out everything in veganism, so that for me, I'm not preaching for such extreme solutions. It's better if people just eat vegetarian food every now and then, and this is becoming more common. For me personally, it's the choice that I don't have to think it again and again every time I made consuming choices, because it's so much more handy in practice to cut it straight.
And I mean, in implementing something like basic income on a nationwide scale, do you think that the overall effect would be negative or positive, because you'd have less consumption presumably by the wealthy and more consumption by low-income individuals? So I'm wondering, what do you think the overall effect would be?
I think the bottom line is that with basic income, that we have basic needs, we have these basic rights for everyone to consume the living, food, housing, the basic needs we have in life. If that's off from the wealthier people, probably the wealthy people consume more unecologically, because if we think they are consuming things that are not necessary for life. So in that way, we could argue that basic income is supporting ecological balance. But on the other hand, we can always say, if you, let's say, you buy a cheap car or you buy an expensive car, the ecological footprint of these two products are equal. So it's not 100% clear that the consumption of the rich people are relatively worse than consumption of poor people per $1. Because the markets are changing, we are consuming more like design, ideas, status, and those are abstract things. It's not necessarily consuming more natural resources than the basic consumption.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But all in all, probably the people needing income distribution are not flying jets, are not traveling around the world, are not consuming that much. So it should be in general levels, evening the consumption to sound human right level. So that should be also ecologically sound. And to back up this, we need to find perhaps some ways to finance the basic income, but not only with income taxes, but also environmental taxes.
What do you mean? What do you mean specifically by environmental taxes?
Like in the primary production, we should not subsidize agriculture. We should not subsidize oil companies, energy companies, the big users of natural resources. We should tax them using these finite resources. And
would you use the tax derived from that for basic income, or where does go?
If we think about natural resources as common welfare, and we could think basic income is a dividend to share this value evenly. So that could be one part of the financing of basic income. We could say this environment is our common property, and everybody, if the common property of clean air or for any pollution is consuming our common resources, so we should tax this and share the value as a dividend through basic income for everyone. Perhaps that could be one part of the thought of widening the income tax idea of taxing basic income back from people who don't need support. So this could be one other way to think about financing the basic income.
So, Simo, do you have any final thoughts before we end the podcast today?
Sorry, the line was bad. Can you ask this again?
Just wondering, Simo, do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts for this subject is it's not obviously clear. We could put basic income. We can implement it ecologically sound, but it's also possible to make basic income models that are ecologically not so sound, adding consumption. But if we think about the basic human rights, basic needs, that should be the level of basic income and the level of any other form of income redistribution. That is the solid base. We have to consume resources as human beings, but what kind of consumption are we financing? What kind of consumption we are restricting are the kind of issues that we have to deal with basic income or with any other system of welfare distribution. So we should take this environmental and perhaps also animal rights.
Basic income, yeah, basic income advocates and environmental need to have this discussion more because I think it's really important. How do you design systems that are both just for humans and also preserve the environment as well? So thank you, Simo. This has been a great conversation. I hope to have you on again.
Yes, thank you.